Welcome, everyone. Welcome. So this is our monthly sketch class, and this is our model for today from a photograph. We're not drawing from life yet. One day we'll do that. But I want to explain the process. So I got this very nice black and white photograph that you see here. And it was not as contrasty, but since I knew we were going to do a charcoal drawing out of this, I beefed up the contrast a little bit. So that makes the darks a little darker, the lights a little bit lighter, and that's always good for charcoal work. And not only that, but since the picture was, cropped here, then the more I studied it, the more I realized, well, how can I overcome obstacles, mental obstacles, and solve some decisions even digitally before I get started. So what I did is I expanded the canvas, as they say here, digitally. So I made it wider, and then look what I did. I expanded out some tones digitally just by using a digital tool. And so what I'm thinking is what about the vignette, right? So the vignette of the head, it's going to end here, and the shoulder coming across here, and I'll have enough tone to create contrast around the face and so forth. So that's the way I like to think. I got this idea from another artist who is really, really good, Casey Baugh. And so I thought, let me try that. Okay, so right now, next step is, so take a picture of this, take a screenshot of this to keep as your reference. That's what I would do. And now the next thing I got to do is figure out what size I'm going to do this. Since this is not Barg, this is not a one-on-one ratio, right? So here's a little thing to keep in mind. Did you know that a life size, you can kind of get close to life size if you do this? Watch me. Somebody wants to come in. Hold on. So look what I'm going to do. Pinky to thumb, chin, bottom of chin, usually it's close to the hairline. That's about a life-size head. So again, tip of the thumb to the top of the pinky. If you're doing chin to the hairline, maybe a little bit, maybe a little around, close to there. That is life size. So what I did is I took this proportional divider and I found chin to the top of her head, and I do it here, and it's pretty close to a life size. Not quite, but it's close enough. So here's what I'm gonna have. So for the next few minutes, I'm gonna work on this. And then when we get to the 30-minute mark, please feel free to ask questions. Okay? So these few marks, friends, are super important. So you really got to be precise here. So I'm using charcoal pencil. Have you all taken Bark course before? If not, I'm going to talk about principles. No? Okay. I'm going to talk about some principles of the Bark course. So the very first thing that the academic method of drawing teaches is finding your height and width. So like if I was to look at the whole left side of this girl's face, where is the furthest point to the left? What I find, I was thinking it's the cheekbone, but it's not. It's actually the temple area around her eyebrows. That seems to be slightly more to the left than the cheekbone, if you were to do a straight line down. And then what's the furthest point of, on the right side? It's that hair. Probably the bottom part of the hair here. So I'm gonna just do that. In fact, just for convenience, I'm going to go diagonally across and find that eyebrow area to this side right around here. Look, I'm going to show it on the mouse. See here? I'm going to go right here. This one's further out, but I'm going to rely on this because I think it's easier going across this way. So, okay, got it. Enough. So you want to take your time on these marks. Why? Because everything is going to be based on this. To give you an analogy, if you're building a house, you got to make sure that the foundation is perfect, right? So that when you start building the walls and the framework, it fits perfectly in that foundation slab. Okay, now that I got that, I'm gonna go pretty light and do the chin part, a little square. Now we can start just sketching and just have fun right away. But guess what? If you don't do this, you might start running into problems later. Like, oh, the proportion's off. This way, it's going to help you, and I'm going to tell you what are ways that it's going to really help maintain that really, and keep the lines really light. Because later on, as we develop this, you want to have be able to erase and keep your beautiful drawing, Okay. All right, so now that we got that, I'm going to draw something really quick on the screen, digitally, okay? Just to show you my thinking process here. So I'm going to do some red so it really stands out. Okay, so what I just did is this. So I'm sure you all have heard the grid method, right? Grid method works, but this is my personal opinion, but the grid method you can't go wrong. You really can't go wrong. So because of that, I prefer something that makes me rely a little bit more on my eye than just a grid, regular grid. So here's that point that I'm talking about right here, the temple. The grid, in my opinion, is kind of like training wheels. Okay, so that's what I got. So why didn't I do the shoulder? Because I feel that I think that's good enough for me to follow that, as once you get enough correct information, then it's not hard to figure out the rest, right? To make this even better, look, I'm going to do this. Look, I'm going to do a couple more lines while we're at it. Here is the center, right? Oops, too much to the right. This is a fast way of doing it. Too much to the pretty good. I've already foresee because because of experience, I've noticed very easy to mess up your tilts. That's off already. Okay, this is what I'm talking about. Right across the eye, I'd like to get this tilt right here. Right down the middle of the eyes, boom. Right to the, the irises. I think that's good. I think that's good enough. Do you think that's good enough guidelines? I mean, like I said, we can do the grid, but come on, we gotta try to figure this out ourselves. Okay. So let's try to have fun with this. I'm gonna put the fan on here. My motto is go light until it's right. So I'm gonna get some big masses, and I'm gonna hit this. In fact, you know what? I should do this. Since I did that digitally, I'm gonna do this on my canvas too. I don't know about you, but drawing vertically is probably not the most common thing to do, but a lot of artists in art schools, they do this. And it does have a nice advantage to it. The advantage is that if you have it laying down on a flat table, there's going to probably be distortion in the angle that you are using. So this method, it's really akin to painting. So it's kind of good to get used to that. Any questions so far? I'm gonna go ahead and take questions anyways, even though I said 30 minutes later. Does this make sense so far, or is this like weird?
Yes, I like watching your method.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, we don't have to do this if you're sketching for fun, but when I look at a subject like this, I know myself. I would kind of get probably angry with myself if I messed it up badly. And I know that you shouldn't. Art should just be fun, as some have expressed. But it's true. But I just like to nail it, as much as I can. So I'm gonna get that tilt a little bit lower here, and it goes up maybe here. Let's see if that makes sense. I hope this is right. But see, this tilt is important. Because everything is going to be based on this. Okay, so I got my lines. Okay, it's pretty close. Okay, so let's start. So I got two options, guys. I can start just doodling a lot of tiny details, but I don't think that's productive. I think it's better just to like block it in like if I was a sculptor. Chop, 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 get big lines. And then once it all looks correctly proportioned, then you can zero in on specific details, okay? So remember, and then I'm going to be talking about negative space. So for example, here, I'm noticing around the top corner, an angle, a big angle here, comes down something like this. Just looking at the big shape first. I'll get the curves a little bit later. And then like this, okay? And then I'm gonna get that eyebrow that comes in. We're gonna talk about later on. We're gonna be talking about two types of curves: concave and convex. And by the way, let me just open this up. Enable Hold on. Okay. Okay, so yeah, so get the big things here. Actually, I'm gonna go down to the chin area, and I notice there's a nice angle that comes here. A little wedge type of thing, looks like a little tiny pizza is right there, coming across here. In fact, I think I'm gonna use a bigger pencil and a darker pencil. So, yeah. Okay, I see this. Let's talk about negative space. So down here, near the eyes, there's a perfectly vertical line. And instead of saying I'm going to draw the eyes, I just look at shapes. Okay, so here is a nice curve here. Okay. And then this becomes a curve up here. And by the way, something I teach my students, and today you guys are my students, so I'm going to teach you. It's always think of angles, matching angles, like the way you would be looking at a clock, and not a digital clock, an old-fashioned hand clock, right, with arms. And you can see where 12 o'clock is, right? You can see where 12 o'clock is. You can see where, from your viewpoint, 9 o'clock is, 3 o'clock is, 6 o'clock, right? You can tell. So try to match what you look at and ask yourself, what time is this angle right now? So that's super helpful. That's a good tip. So here I'm going to see a big line here. This becomes a flat line right around this intersection here. This is over.
No.
Let me put you all on mute unless you have a specific question. I'll let Leighton be the moderator, okay? So you can unmute yourself whenever you want. Then, so if somebody has a question, you can tell me, okay? Okay, so it comes like that. Here. Now here is it intersecting this. So again, I'm just roughing the whole thing in. Okay. So I'm gonna get so around here. Angle here. What's up around here? Here. Big shapes. This is, by the way, the same method we use in painting. Big shapes. And then you could always round things out and define things later. By the way, I always say this is an hour sketch, but we usually go over an hour, right? Right, Leighton?
That's right.
Especially when we really like overdrawing and we say, okay, man, we got to keep going a little bit more. Okay, so that chin was a little off. Okay, let's talk about curves. There's the ones that go in this way, that's concave, like think of a cave. Convex goes the opposite way, like a pregnant woman. That's convex. And so there's only those two curves. So from the viewpoint that you're looking at it, you gotta just ask yourself, what curve is this? And where is the pitch of the curve? Where is the break? Things like that, right? By the way, this is really not taught in most schools, not even college, nothing like art classes in college. They don't teach that. I know somebody who's getting a master's of fine art, and they haven't been taught any of this. So this is good that you guys are here. Okay, so let's go here and look at the pitch of the angle. If it's wrong, you fix it. So don't commit to anything yet until you are convinced this is it. Okay, now here the earring is interesting tilt, almost vertical, but not quite. So we're going to go here, break somewhere here, and then changes direction around here. Now, since we're artists, we might want to change something here and there. Like I know I looked at her neck and I thought it was slightly wide. So what if I decide later to thin it down just slightly? It's not a sin to do that as long as you're doing it on purpose. You know? So like when I was doing this digital sketch, I actually gave her a slightly more hair toward the back. That's like the illustrator in me doing that, because illustrators don't have to follow something exactly. But there's a lot of things, like especially in a picture like this, you do want to do it exactly because it's good, you know. But you, in my view, sometimes I think, how can I make it a little bit better? Give you an example. If you were to draw Jesus a perfect man, or Adam a perfect man, or Eve, would you want her to look just average, or would you want her to look like very pretty because she was a perfect woman? See, that's just a rhetorical question, but that's the way I like to think, you know, like as an illustrator. Okay, now I'm got to get to those eyes. I'm going to bring this hairline a little bit higher here. Here. Curve this a little bit more. Here. Okay, it's a little intimidating. You got to admit. Gonna get the eyes. The chin seems a little off already. So here's the kneaded eraser. I'm going to adjust the chin. It's a little bit. I could tell by looking at that little wedge that created that little triangle. Bring it in just a little bit. Okay, here we go. Actually, yeah, I'm gonna do that right now. Okay, so get the brows. Go here. Was it meets here? Here. Okay, I'm drawing a straight line down just to measure something. And that's just, I'm just trying to see where does the brow drop. And remember, if from this angle, I see, if this was an angle going a certain direction, I would say it's probably around 9:30, not even 10 yet, but there it is. There's a gap here between that line and that line, so I'm going to go even higher with this. How thick is the brow? You got to ask yourself. Okay. And by the way, shading is very, very important. So there's a few, I know people that are students who they can draw accurately, but their shading, it needs work, you know. So it's good to learn the tools of shading. This is a stump. We also have brushes, painting brushes, believe it or not. That's just to smooth it out. So I'm gonna go with that. Okay, and thick. What's the thickness of that brow that comes across? Okay, where's the other brow? Okay, it's lining up here. Down this way. I might be off, so I don't want to commit. So I'm not going to do anything really dark yet. I'm going to rough it in. When you shade, it's kind of a good idea to not be scribbly, but kind of like find like same stroke direction is, it's a good way to do it. This little peak of the brow is kind of right around there. Okay, and now let me identify the position of the nose. Maybe that's a little too much. Okay. Now let's get the position of the nose, all right. So it'll get interesting. I just saw something about the mouth. The corner of the mouth is here. So yeah, right there where that line is. And then it goes close to this line, but not quite, at a nice angle. So I'm gonna roughly put that in. And a line that comes across like this. Of course, part goes up a little bit more than the other, drops here, drops in the corner, and then picks up again. And then the middle is somewhere here. The lip wraps around just a little bit. Bottom of the lip, let's say it's around here. If I have to adjust anything, I will. So here's some shadows kind of in here. Curve up. Yes, and I think that chin is still too big. Good to back up once in a while. Yeah, I'm gonna back up. Let's see. Look for angles as much as possible. Back up. Okay, then place the eyes. So now let's go with the eyes. So this little line I drew represents kind of the center of the eye, going right where the iris is, little pupil. When I draw eyes, I try to imagine that there is a complete circle, and where is it that circle is intersected by the lids. Here's like that. And also squint your eyes, guys, squint your eyes to see a mass of dark where it would be like the eyelashes and all that. Get the mass of dark before you go crazy with little details. And so right now I'm seeing this mass right here of the lashes. So the more we think in terms of shapes rather than things, we're better off. So like that lash is gonna get close to that edge of that guideline. I hope you can see at this point why those 4 points were important. Otherwise, you would just you just be floating, right? Floating in the middle of nowhere with no guidance. I know some do it and they have a great eye they can develop to do it. I have a hard time with that. So I have to be a little mechanical about this. But I don't want to be too mechanical. So what would too mechanical be? Grid. Okay, so I'm already can see an eye developing. And at what angle? Okay. What's the lid? Okay. Okay. This goes even further. Okay. Lips intersect here. Angle here. Slight curve. I see that almost a straight line, but there is a curvature to that right part of the lip, top lip. It's kind of like it's dipping somewhere and then going a little bit higher here. So this is what I think is a pretty good position for top of the lip. There's a little shadow part that kind of comes like that. That's a little point of the lip. I don't know what to call it. I'm sure there's an anatomical word for that. Okay. And this part of the lip comes like this. Okay. Let's get the lid. the eyelid of here. Up here. I'm gonna at this angle. There, later on, we're gonna talk about values, but right now I'm just kind of placing things. There's more than one approach to doing this. There is one approach that is very abstract, which is just mass and darks, which it'll be fun. One of these days I'm gonna be courageous and just do it. But that involves just putting masses and then reshaping them later. You know what I mean? So that takes a lot of just total trust in your abilities, because you don't get freaked out about all the abstract stuff that is happening. Okay, so here, thickness of this brown coming here. Okay, I'm gonna get that other eye. By the way, I'm gonna even draw the light that is being caught here. I'm gonna even look at the shape of that. And the proper curvature of this eye, and where does it meet here, and how much white of the eye is actually showing. You know, and then consider the amount of mascara she has, you know, makeup, where it's going. Just look at shapes. But all of this has to be figured out as we. And why are eyes so important, friends, in portraiture? Any comments?
Because that's the first thing people will see when they look at your picture.
Exactly, that's the focal point. So we want to get the eyes right. Okay, I'm gonna get the angle of that nose. It's a nice kind of dainty nose, and the tilt is a little bit. I'm gonna kind of see the distance. Look, guys, there's a listen. Look at me. I don't know which one to look at. Here, can you see my face better here? Probably better here, right?
Yeah.
Okay, there's a relationship in the form of a triangle between the eyes, nose, basically the distance of the eyes and the nose. This kind of forms a triangle. And if you want to include the brows, think of that too. But always think of that relationship, like, and how it's working. So those are, I think they call that the salient points in the portrait. Eyes, nose, mouth, relationship. Like, how much gap is there between the top of the lip and the bottom of the nose? So you got to think about that. And then here it goes up here. And I always like to line up and say, okay, so this was perfectly in front of me, you know, then like what if I was lining up a vertical line, where would things line up, you know? So I'm looking at that nostril. This part of the nostril lines up right where the little point is. Comes around here and kind of ends here in this line. And then this part goes up to, like, if this was a clock, around where, like 2:30, then it kind of catches across here like this with the wing and a nostril. And then there's an interesting kind of chiseled shadow that comes up like this, up, and then turns to the right. And then let's see, I'm going to try to get, like, again, chiseled approach to getting the right angles. Let's see. Brow should be a little bit further in. Eye should be a little bit more here. Ooh, it's hard, isn't it, guys? Okay, so now this should be higher. Saw an angle change. This nose, I barely see it, but it is curving out here. Let me see the shape of that smaller nostril to the side. Okay. And then the nostril comes around here. I don't know if y'all have heard of Andrew Loomis, but Andrew Loomis was a great artist, illustrator, and teacher in like the 1950s around there. If you can ever get a hold of any of his drawing instructional books, they're very good references. Andrew Loomis. And my very first instructional book that I ever got when I was pretty young was Drawing the Head by Andrew Loomis. Beautiful book. Totally good for even for kids. Clean, if you know what I mean. It's a great book. It talks about the construction of the head. Even his technique was like outstanding. Like, man, how did he? But he had a beautiful way of working with angles, angularizing, kind of glamorizing a model, like like a handsome man or a good-looking woman or in child. He was just great. Andrew Loomis. Okay. All right. Let's get some big shapes here. This is like the hairline. Actually, this girl reminds me of like an Andrew Loomis model. It was kind of cool. Once you start learning about art, you kind of get kind of flashbacks, and you start again, kind of get inspired. Her neck here, angle. So even though this is not part of my box or envelope, it's still, the envelope does help me with it because I still can relate to it, right? Like compare shapes, even on the outside based on that. Okay, let me get the hair. I don't know if this is a good tool, a good tip or not, but I'll share it with you. I think it was pretty cool when I heard it. There was this guy called Fred Fixler that a friend of mine in the art department told me about that studied under. Fred Fixler in California. And you can glean things from everybody, right? So he taught students to kind of glamorize models a little bit, because it's illustration. And he said that when you see kind of an angle with a little tiny bump in it, draw it, just ignore that tiny bump and draw it as an angle, straight. And when you see a little bit of a curvature and it's taken more of the identity of a curve, then even if you exaggerate it, you draw it like a curve. So either it kind of becomes either one or the other, but a little bit accentuated, and it develops a nice style. Does that make sense? So there's a little bit stylization comes out of that. Okay, let me get that other eye. You can see I'm trying to avoid it, but I'm not going to avoid it any further. Okay, so there's an interesting conglomerate of just shadow right at the middle of the intersection. So again, I'm not caring what that is. I'm just seeing a shape, right? Let me just put a shadow there. It doesn't matter. But look, it's still going to be helpful, right? So I'm going to study this. Where is the inside part of the eye? And it comes up here, here. This angle, remember we talked about the thickness of it, the angle of it. So that mascara is so thick, it goes up to even that second intersection of the diagonal, which is pretty cool, right? It's helpful. So I got that there. Now, where is the little scissor truss around there? It comes the point here, comes up. So I got an oval shape like that. The lid is close to the brow, a little bit of a gap there. Okay. Okay, one thing I should do, I'm going to kind of take a break from that eye for a bit. I want to get the big shape of the shadow that comes across and defines the cheekbone. And then there's this part that comes here. Defining the bones a little bit. Temple, like a breaking point. Right here. This part goes a little bit more here. And then goes up a little bit more here. It's a little peak that comes out a little bit more. Curve this side a little bit more now. Dip in here. Angles. Oops. Wow, it's already 9:41. So you know what I'm noticing? I'm learning about myself. It takes me about an hour just to block this in. That's not that good, but anyway. Okay, studies. I'm looking at the thickness of that eyeball. So doesn't it make sense, guys, that the thickness of one eyeball should be very similar to the thickness of the other one? Yes, so be looking for that. So that little catch light resting right on that little. You know what's kind of cute about her? She's a slightly cross-eyed. Have you noticed how, like, sometimes Asians and all that, I don't know, not just Asians, but some people, like, look at this girl, slightly cross-eyed, actually has a little bit of a cuteness to it. You notice that? I don't know if you have or not. Very slightly. Okay, I noticed that this is turning flat here. And this angle is a little bit tilted this way. A little higher, actually. Okay, double check your angles. There's an interesting bone here, right? Okay, any questions so far? No. Okay, I gotta get this brown now to kind of get a little thicker here. Goes around here. Reestablish the thickness of that brow. And come around here. Okay, actually, I'm very happy with this so far. I think I got the main points here. Now let me just restructure this a little bit more. So now I notice, let's find these shadows around here. Okay, I'm gonna get this like neck angle that comes here. That's the angle. It's a little bit of a triangle that comes like that. And then it comes kind of like this, almost to the middle of this line, and then goes out. Okay. All right. So, should we take a break? You guys just want to keep going? Want to get that nose just right. Okay, at this point, then I'm going to switch gears to, I got the drawing pretty much right. I'm happy with the drawing. So the rest is what? You guys tell me.
Shading, highlights, and
Shading. Shading, very important. If this is ever going to grow into the realm of realism, it's going to have to be shaded properly. What are we looking for in shading? What are we trying to capture?
where the way light touches.
Yes, and how many what is the definition of values? Values.
Amount of light.
It's how much light and dark relationship, right? Okay, so let me show you what I have. So I have it in no shading yet. Okay, I'm gonna go crazy now. Okay, here we go. Actually, I'm gonna erase some lines before I do that, because the placement is pretty secure now, I think. So let me erase some of these lines. Remember, light until it's right, right? So I think it's light and correct enough. So especially in the areas where it's light, now I can go back and erase. Does that make sense? So look, now I can go back and erase this stuff. Right here, 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 here. So my scaffolding is kind of disappearing now, because I'm pretty content with what I have there, right? Make sense so far, everyone? Yes or no? No,
Yes.
no comments? What do you say, Shay? Shay from Oklahoma?
Sorry, it's kind of noisy in my house.
Okay. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so now we got this. I think it's pretty close to the proportion. And I could always fudge it different. Okay, here we go. So now we're going to use the famous sachet, which is just a cloth that I made up. Put some of this charcoal powder inside. Close it up with a little wire like you do in the, your bread bags. And now I'm going to town. Watch. And I'm even looking at some of the background tones that are there, right? Because remember, the background is going to need some values too, right? As long as I don't mess it up too bad. I still want to see what I'm doing. Okay. This is a fast way and a pretty effective way to shade. A little bit scary, I have to admit, because it's like, oh, am I gonna ruin everything I did earlier? Look here. Why this? Because it's against a tone, right? So we need to have a little bit of the background there, right? To offset the light part of her face. But when you learn how to do it this way, friends, then this is kind of closer to painting approach, because we're toning this. Okay. There's different ways, as they say, skin a cat, or many roads to beat to Rome, or whatever you want to say. There's a lot of methods, but this one gets you there pretty fast. Here. And even though it's here, there is a little bit tone on the neck, by the way. So if it's a little bit here, it's okay, In fact, I'm gonna even be bold and do a little bit everywhere. Watch. Why is that? Because I'm gonna actually lift up stuff later. Did I lose my drawing? No, not yet. So I better stop there. Woo! I could use this is kind of scary. But anyways, okay. Still there. It's all still there. But a little scary about it is that there is pretty much not much more grid anymore, right? Or guidelines. But look what I'm doing now with the kneaded eraser. Now I can reshape some of these, right? Look at that. Lifting out some lights here. Nice. The forehead. Nice thing about the kneaded eraser, you can kind of go thick, flat. So here's, if you study her face, there's like on the whole like front ridge of her skull, there's some light there, all the way to around here. Now let's do the top of the nose, the bridge of the nose, right here. Actually, could be doing this all later, but let me just lift out a few things like on the edge of the. I may even use a malt stick. You all know what a malt stick is? Just to steady the hand. I'm going to use a little malt stick right around here. Look at that. I'm lifting out the lightest lights right around here. That ridge of their eye. This area. That little eye catch light right there. Bring it back out. Okay. If I have to redraw something, I could always do that later. But I think I have enough there that I'm gonna go with it now. So now it's kind of like a pianist. Okay, here's I usually use this illustration when I'm doing painting classes, but it's the same principle. So have you ever seen the position of a pianist, how he sits in relationship to the piano? Is he all the way on one side, all the way on the other side, or right sitting in the middle? He sits in the middle. That way he can reach his low notes and his high notes, right? So now, right now, what I just did, I kind of set it up so that I got a lot of midtones going. But guess what I'm going to do now? Darks. Okay, look. Soft charcoal sticks. Let's see if I can find, this is the boldest one possible. But I'm going to get some regular vine charcoal. You know. See if I could get some of that. Like this, look, these things. Soft. So here we go. It's like black, right? That's why I like this particular drawing, because it's a black and white. So in charcoal, it's red nicely as a black and white, you know. So you see, so it's one thing that it's good kind of to think about is, so if you were to look at this in values, think of how many values and which are those values. This is black, the black value. So that would be number 5. And then you have number 3 is right in the middle, and then you have lightest light is, that's the white little thing that would represent the paper. That's 1. So 1 through 5 is a good way. You know, some do 1 through 9. That could be done too. But even if you understand it like 1 through 5, that's helpful. Okay, so here you get those big shapes again. Sometimes they have like little rocks and stuff in it. You gotta be careful. They say that sometimes it's kind of when you draw, use your arm. Sometimes like this. Look, there's two. Sometimes just drawing with your wrist, it's like little noodling. But if you move your whole arm, you can do better, like a better sweep and motion. You know, like a broader. That's a nice little tip. Okay, so let me study that ear because I don't think I drew that in. In fact, let me go back to this pencil. This brow a little bit darker now. So look, there's basically broad stroke. There's a broad stroke is when you use a white part of the lead. And then, and by the way, consider getting one of these pencils. Look, you peel them, you expose a lot of the lead, and then be careful, but with a razor blade, a nice clean razor blade, go on top of a trash can and just shave, and be spinning it more and more and more until you get a point. So that's it's a pretty cool tool to have. Okay, anyways, you can do a hatching, which is little lines, or you can do like a broad stroke approach. Andrew Loomis was really wonderful with the broad stroke. Okay, I'm going to kind of redefine with more darks around here. And even the type of paper you all use is important. Because if you use like a really coarse paper, it's not going to look. I gave her a little bit more of a dip in her, and that looks nicer to me.
I think my paper is coarse. So you had said the extra smooth paper? Is that what it's called?
Extra smooth is good.
Okay.
Yeah, coarse. It's even if you do a beautiful job, there's something about the look that is not as nice. Here's something to talk about. I think it's interesting. Abstract versus realism. Like I could probably make this look like a photograph if I had enough time. Like let's say I had hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. All right. But I can also choose to focus on certain parts that are very important, like the eyes, the mouth, the nose, and then other parts like the hair are not as important. And I can actually make certain areas a little bit looking abstract, you know, like the way it's sketched, you know. So my question to you is, what do you prefer? Do you like the photo look, or do you like a look that has a little bit of artiness to it, but yet at the same time has realism to it? That's a personal question. I know what I like. I don't know what you guys like. You guys want to comment on that?
A hybrid of both.
I agree. A hybrid. So it's actually, in my opinion, I know you guys probably don't agree with me. To do a drawing that looks photorealistic, to me, it's like I can't admire. I mean, I can't help to admire the skill level involved that it took to do that, but it just doesn't excite me too much. Because to me, and that applies to paintings and drawings, I'd rather, I mean, if you're gonna do that, well, just have a photograph taken, you know?
Just
But-
print
but-
the photo. Just print the photo if you want to do
Yeah,
that.
just go ahead and print the photo and you save yourself hundreds of hours. You know what I mean? If you're gonna do something to look exactly like a photo. But if you like do artistic touch, you know, and then and you can see the strokes, the angle, you know, the interpretation of the artist a little bit in there. It's really cool, you know?
Is it unique?
Yeah, it's like your signature kind of, you know? So anyways, that's just my personal. Okay, so this Sargent, my favorite artist, he said the secret of painting, and I could say drawing too, is the halftones. So understanding values. Like right now, this temple area, it's very tricky, very subtle. I got to get this right. So I'm going to kind of creep up on this value. So it's turning somewhere around here. Okay, now that I got that there, what can I do to soften it? What about a brush? What about a stump? Right? So I can do that, right? Let me find where my stump go. You gotta be careful with stumps sometimes because if they stay kind of dirty, then you put it on and it's like, oh, it's like a kind of a smearing effect and blotchiness if you're not careful. But this one's working pretty good. See that? Okay, so now I'm gonna have to go further. I know I'm gonna have to go further, so I'm gonna extend this out a little bit more. Any questions so far? If you guys gotta go, I understand, but I think that's seeing more of the processes and you know, sticking to it till it's more complete is super important. Get more of this here.
I came pretty late. I got mixed up with the time zone. So I'm just trying to catch up with you guys.
That's okay, it's okay. Okay, let me talk about on the topic of shading. Let me explain something that is very important that when I give my classes, by the way, any of you want to be my students, I'm actually able to take on a few more, but it has to be in a certain time. And that time is 9 a.m. in the morning for Central Time. And it's only 30 minutes. The reason I have that is because since I do go out in service in the middle of the week. So because of that, that's all I could do. And then I have to kind of disconnect and then focus on my ministry. But I can take some students 9 a.m. to 9:30 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And on Saturdays, I can do a little earlier because the group meets a little earlier. So right now it's 8:30. I think it's 8 o'clock Central to 8:30. And then we only need to do like 2 classes a month. 2 classes a month. And with that, we get a really strong foundation in drawing. We go through a really good course called the Bard Drawing Course. Shay, you took it with me, right? Do you think it helped you?
Yeah, it helped me a lot.
Yeah, because we go over all these principles and this you know, go over the same principles that we're doing right now with, but you have more time in the middle of the week that you can develop it. And it's just a good course that even Vincent van Gogh took. And that's, it was used a lot in the 19th century, so good benefit. In fact, one of the reasons I like doing this class too is because to break my students out of the mold. In other words, I like them to finish it to a level of it looks finished, you know. But this format that we're using tonight, it kind of forces you to make those decisions fairly quickly, so that you don't take forever to do the, you know, your artwork, which can happen, right, Shay? If you start taking forever and just being nitpicky for the rest of it, you can just kind of fall into a mold, and then you start losing spontaneity and everything. And so that's not the idea either. So this kind of brings a happy medium, this approach here.
And then you focus on a certain part and then you forget about the rest of the drawing.
Yeah. Oh, it's a really great course. Okay, so this is interesting because there's shading needs to happen here too. And then even though we do this, there's going to be even more fine tuning later that we can use with other pencils. And I want to get this here, the certain roundness of the skull coming here. And then edges are important too. So edges. What do you all understand by edges, friends? Anybody want to define what I'm talking about when I say be observant and attentive to edges?
The harsh? I don't know.
The what?
Is it like the harsh? Of,
Harsh?
like something harsh? I don't
Okay. Well, look at this. Like right now, I'm doing the eyebrows.
Mhm.
Like this is a hard edge. It's just
Oh.
like straight line, right? But in real life, there's soft transitions, right? So the way my brows are kind of just
Oh, okay, okay.
and the way like the light and shadow are meeting here, that's a soft transition. So you got to study that, and so that when you draw and you put these edges as you see them correctly with a certain, there's basically 3 approaches. Let's review them. Hard, soft, and lost. That's all. Hard, soft, and lost. So this is a hard edge right now. So it's at the beginning you do put them hard, kind of hard, you know. But then eventually you gotta soften some of them. Okay, another thing in shading is how much pressure do you put on your pencil? So I'm pretty sure all you all, as adults know how to drive, huh? Jay, you're driving already. I remember when you got your license.
Yep.
So it's important to, when you drive, control how much pressure you put on the pedal, both the accelerator and the brake pedal, right? So that's exactly what happens when you shade. When you go really heavy, it's going to be dark. If you put a lot of light pressure, it's going to be light. So simple as that. And then you also have like soft charcoal, like right now, watch this. See that? I'm really going for it on this one, right? Even though it looks messy and ugly, but actually, you know, this is exactly what you need to get your values right, right? This is scary even for me. But you know what? You gotta trust the process. Yeah, trust the process. All you're doing is just adding values, right? So now, you know, you could always clean it up like this. See? So in here, especially, you squint and you can leave a certain edges soft, like kind of diffused. Like this. This brow is gonna be a little soft. This is gonna be a little soft here. In fact, here's an interesting thing. Look at this. I'm gonna change a little bit. You see that painting there? That's a painting I did of a Velasquez, and he was a master of edges. And so I studied that. And there's the way he painted this was that there was very few hard edges except for right in that eye, because that's the focal point, and another couple of areas. A lot of the rest was soft. So because as we see with we focus on one thing and then the rest is peripheral vision. So I kind of like keeping the hair a little bit diffused. Soften some edges here. Not everywhere, but it's at least certain spots. And you know, it's kind of cool thing. When you squint your eyes, the first thing that disappears when you squint, that probably should be drawn or painted very, very softly, very softly. The last thing that disappears should be done with a hard edge. It's kind of a cool little guideline, huh? How many of you squint when you do art?
Yes, that's a very good tip.
Squinting.
I
See
don't
that? Go ahead. Like, look at this. This whole area here is important to fade it in. So Sargent said the secret of painting is in the halftones. So where light and shadow meet. Handling that is very important. And right around this area is a little bit more shadow. right, guys, I don't know how long you guys want to stay, but I'm gonna keep going. Because I have the energy for it today. I don't always have the energy, but I think I'm gonna stick with this one a little bit longer.
Stick when you want to leave because I came a little late, so I don't mind.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm gonna work on the cheekbone a little bit more. That's pretty deep. When I squint that values, I see it's pretty deep. It's almost as deep as the hair. Something that's kind of cool to do once in a while, guys. I haven't talked about this too much in the past, but where shadow and light meet, there's usually like a. Okay, I'm gonna just say, I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible for you guys, but I'm just gonna say it. Artists call that the bed bug line. Bed bugs. You probably wondering, what am I talking about? Bed bugs. Bed bug line. So, have you ever noticed the way insects like a bed bug, or it could be even a fly or something, they see lights and they just fly right around it. They are focused to the light. So the idea is that there is a certain placement of shadow and light, like right in between, and they call that the bedbug line right there. So sometimes you accent that a little bit more, you know, a little bit of accent right between the shadow and light, and then you soften the edge, and that's realistic, you know. So I don't know if that makes sense or not, but that's the way it is. So finding that contour of shadow and light, it's a nice thing to do that. And then, like for example, here in the temple, I'm finding that shadow and light, and then it's a little bit more emphasis here. And then it starts fading a little bit. Because there's also the thing called reflected light. But this is called a chamois. And you can get like a rag like this, like it's a leather rag, and you can wipe stuff off. So like, you know, sharp, like I'm wiping some off here. Here. And here on the chin. Forehead. Okay, so that's a pretty rough transition that I just created here. So I'm going to soften it up a little bit. Right in here. By the way, guys, you know what my opinion is? The charcoal drawing is harder than oil painting. Probably don't believe me, but I think it is. But you know, after a while, you start understanding the way the medium works. You know, but it's a challenging medium, but it's beautiful if you nail it. I'm getting find these values here. what are the main tools we're using? Charcoal, stumps. You could also use Q-tips if you wanted to. What do you call that again? Sachet. Brush. You're right here. I see some. Oh. I think I'm gonna start focusing on those eyes and around here a little bit more. Zoom in. I'm gonna do a little trick. Not a trick, but I'm gonna actually pull up the picture here on my phone to study it a little bit more. See? Okay, right now, for the sake of the demonstration, I'm looking at it from a distance. But I think I'm gonna zoom in. See, now I can study the shape of the eye like this. You see? I'm gonna do this seriously. All right. Remember, eyes are a focal point, right? Saw a nice angle of the brow that I hadn't noticed, so I'm going to capture that. Soft edge, soft edge, soft edge, soft edge, soft edge here. Okay, squint, squint, squint. So guys, once you start learning how to see, it's just a matter of time until you can nail anything. But you know what the most important quality for a realist artist is? What do you think?
Patience.
Yes, patience. So not rushing it. I mean, but there, like I said earlier, it's kind of a balance because I was saying earlier, you don't want to make it look like a photograph, right? Necessarily. But if you stick with it long enough, you can really nail something. You know? Like right now, I'm looking at this. I know I can get it. It's going to take a lot of time. Notice the eye is a little bit going out generally speaking, in an eye, the darkest dark is right in the center. And also right above the top eyelashes, right below, I mean. Why is that? There's a logic to it. Want to hear it? Because just like a roof of a house, it creates shadow below on the edge. The eyelashes create shadow underneath it. So that's why that should be drawn darker. And that gives it a nice dimension when that's shown that way. Makes sense, right? A little closer. Yeah. Squint. To the shape of the white of the eye. Okay, and the shade here, show the little rich. Shade in the inner part too. Okay, so look at the surrounding tones of the eye too. I noticed there's some shading there. Okay. The lid needs to be a little thicker. But you know what I'm super glad about? That I took the time when I first started to measure that diagonal line of the eyes. Otherwise, I probably would have messed up. This is boot camp, isn't it? Serious, serious. You guys are proving to be serious artists. It's encouraging. These eyes are tricky. Really gotta study these carefully. Hmm. If I get those eyes. You know, it's kind of funny that I struggled for the last 15 minutes on that, but I'm happy. I could tell I'm on the right track now. But any little thing on those eyes can throw it off. And now that I step back, I see it's just the right amount of cross-eyedness that it still looks cute, but not too much. Kind of funny.
They're beautiful.
It
I
feels
mean-
good. Thank you. Getting there. there's all these like subtle muscles in eyes, right? That you gotta capture, and then there's the roundness of the white of the eye too. They get all that stuff. You guys are a fun group to draw with. Hey, would you guys be, hey, let me ask you guys something. Would you all be interested in, whenever you guys get ready to paint and get some practice, would you all like to meet up somewhere and have a painting excursion?
I'd love to.
That would be really nice.
You know what I'm thinking? Of course, Europe, but not yet. First start in the United States in a beautiful place such as Colorado, the Rockies. And we can paint a landscape, a beautiful landscapes for about a week. That'd be fun, huh?
That would be really nice.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm more comfortable doing landscapes than people. So that would be
a lot easier.
Yeah, it's much easier.
I took a lot of Chris's classes, so
Oh yeah, Chris Kolofsky?
yeah.
Oh, good. Did you do the live ones or the recorded ones?
I did, I think, the recorded ones because I was in school at the time.
He's good, isn't he?
Yeah, he is.
He really has mastered the art of the landscape and quickly too. He's doing one that he showed me the other day, today, in fact, on the what is the Grand Canyon. Man, it's looking great, great color, good edges, excellent edges, values. You know, I used to work. Chris and I worked together in the art department. I'll tell you a funny story about Chris. Chris Kolofsky. By the way, let me give a little shout out to Chris. If you don't know, if you go to Ode to Art Academy, in my school, he's been kind of real busy to teach live classes. He can't do it anymore, but he has a series of painting videos that he's very very detailed in how he teaches, and he will do a demo and then send you it every week with the reference, and you paint it, and he tells you exactly what colors is mixing and how to approach the whole thing. So yeah, Chris is very good, very good. But anyways, Chris, when I was in the art department, I'd been there a few years already, and he worked in shipping department. He was, he loved art, and he wanted to get a shot at being in the art department. I didn't know him at all though, and at the same time, there was a friend of mine who was a Korean brother who had been coaching him, because I knew he was good. I'd been coaching him so that he can apply to the art department, or like send in a portfolio. And then to make a long story short, that brother's name is Tim. And then Tim and then my overseer found Chris, heard about him somehow. And in my imperfect mind, I said, oh man, I don't want that guy to come in. I want my friend to come in. And so, but I was nice to him and all that, But the thing is, they both came in. And then I got to know Chris, and he's a really fun guy, a really energetic guy. And the funny thing is that I hardly even talk to the first guy as my friend anymore that I got in. But I still pretty close friends with Chris. So we kind of really hit it off. It's Kalofsky. So you never know who's going to turn out to be your buddy in life, right? Okay. And it's funny because a lot of my friends that are probably my closer friends are people who I didn't really, have the best impression at first. But then, the more you get to know the person, you realize, this person is all right. It's cool. And it's just funny. It teaches you a lesson not to judge people. Okay, so the eyes are getting there. Get some brows there. Sometimes that makes a pretty good difference. So Leighton, Mark Coker, we're thinking about doing a Greece tour.
Cool. Yeah, I would do the Greece one.
That'd be cool, huh?
And then you're going on the October Israel trip.
Yes.
You excited?
Yes, we're excited.
It's been like 20 years for you.
Since 06, so not quite 20, but
Just about. Mm.
there, yeah. That was right.
Okay, Ed, it's approaching midnight here. I'm going to take off, but looking forward to seeing the
Okay,
finish of yours.
let's pause and see what everybody did, okay?
Okay.